All right, welcome back in here to Live Now from Fox. I'm Andy Mack. Thank you so much for joining us. We want to get into one of our top stories of the day, and we'll have an update coming up from police in the coming hours. About 4 p.m. Eastern time will be the second update on that shooting at that high school in Iowa, in Perry, Iowa, Dallas County. We do know that there are multiple injuries, not a ton of information beyond that, but this was the scene earlier on today at this high school there in this small town of some 8,000 people. We do know the suspect is dead, this according to police. We want to get more information on this and discuss more of what's going on in Iowa. We want to be joined by former FBI agent Scott Duffy. Thank you so much for joining us here on Live Now from Fox. And of course, this shooting happened at about 7:37 this morning before school, before a lot of students were at that building. But when you hear of something like this, maybe where does your mind go initially?
I cringe like the rest of the world when we hear of these mass shootings, these active shooters, especially in what is supposed to be one of our most revered and innocent places is places of learning, whether it be a high school, elementary, or so. I, like everybody else, are just just cringe. And when, especially early in the morning, it makes me wonder, how, especially returning from winter break, how this individual, what was going through their head, how long they've been on their winter break, how long before the winter break were they probably planning. This didn't happen in a vacuum, which means that there is a lot of information and leaks, missed information, miscues, etc. And then obviously seeing, as we will learn as the facts unfold, what has transpired up to this date. But the response, like any other active shooter, no matter where in the United States, is amazing. To see departments of all federal, state, and local coming together very quickly and to assemble and to address the threat is just, it all comes through this training that's been out there for quite some time now.
And you mentioned the investigation still ongoing. We're going to hopefully learn more facts. So we'll be quite a few questions at this press conference coming up at about 4 o'clock Eastern, so about 90 minutes or so away. But like I mentioned initially, it was 7:37, and police say officers arrived 7 minutes later. This is a very small community. Maybe can you describe maybe that dynamic? Just a community that is this small, maybe a police department that is also smaller. Maybe talk a little about the response there from police in a community of just 8,000 people.
Yeah, so it's a very small community, very tight knit, and I'm not sure just how big the police department is, but just from looking at this morning's presser, I can see that you had your local police chief, you had your sheriff, and so thereby you have county, state, and local, and so what is happening with any type that an active shooter situation will come out, that there are protocols, and it is anybody within earshot that can get there as soon as possible is responding. And law enforcement has learned that over the years, where they are to quickly assemble and partner up and address the threat if the threat is still active upon arrival. And when I did hear 7 minutes, that's an eternity for those that are in need, absolutely. But I can guarantee that police respond as soon as they can. I wouldn't even be surprised if you have off duty that are able to respond, that they're responding in and quickly assessing the situation. So it's I don't know if there were armed guards or any type of school resource officer in place at the time. I guess we'll see during the press conference what the layout of these officer and resources that were available. But yeah, 7-minute response time. And from what we gathered, the seeing that there were casualties and injuries is just an amazing thing for all of public safety to come together and to quickly jump into action.
Yeah, certainly a very difficult time for so many in that community, just 8,000 people. So potentially there's connections to so many people. They're all intertwined in a small town if you grew up in a small town. Talk me through maybe the investigation from this point on. And we know the suspect is now dead. How does maybe officials, law enforcement, FBI look into motive and potentially what was behind something like this? What is the investigation and how does the investigation unfold in that way?
Yeah, so in these active shooter situations, especially in a school situation, not knowing enough if this is a student, whether it be an active student or a student that had either been expelled or graduated. So not knowing those facts yet, those things are in place. The sheriff did say at his morning press conference that the shooter was identified. So that's a good for law enforcement. And my guess is there was something quickly in place to be able to indicate to law enforcement that the shooter, from what we gather, at least at this juncture, that the shooter had died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. That is not unique. That is not a surprise. And so right now, law enforcement, first and foremost, is to have neutralized the threat. And if the threat was neutralized, then to assure that those that are trapped or whatever have you inside the location stay in place, locked down until law enforcement is able to say, hey, we're law enforcement, we're safe, and we're getting you out and far away from the crime scene as possible. And then, of course, the bringing together of the community. He talked about a reunification site that seemed like it was already in place. So it sounds like they had their protocols in place. And now these situations, unfortunately, they do not operate in a vacuum. And there is a lot to have that we have learned over the years, time and time again. And they will be going over social media. They will be going over witness accounts, family, any previous mental health to see first and foremost what was the motive, perceived or real, right? It is within their mind, and then they make a decision after thinking a lot about it and perhaps writing about it, whether it be in social media posts or in some sort of private diary, which law enforcement most likely will be able to retrieve and be able to assess some sort of motive that led up to this event, and then to see how we can learn. It is constantly trying to learn from these to prevent these in some way, shape, or form.
That is a
So that
very good point.
communities like Perry don't keep suffering again and again.
Yeah, it's certainly a very difficult day for them, but some good notes there about potentially they learned the identity, but they don't know if it's a student, someone that graduated, someone that is just maybe coincidentally in that area. So, Scott Duffy, thank you again for joining us here on Live Now from Fox. Some great information. Of course, that press conference coming up in just about 90 minutes, but we appreciate your time and joining us here on Live Now.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you so much. All right.